Hey there, and welcome to another episode of Dating Alchemy with me, Jen Youngquist. In today's episode, it's episode number 8, entitled How to Heal When You'll Never Get Closure or an Apology. This one is one that I've had a lot of personal experience with, so I'm going to share my tips for you. But before we get started, just a heads up, I like to swear, and I'm not going to stop, and I'm not going to apologize for it. Just know ahead of time, be aware of who's around when you press play. All right. So this episode might be a little bit longer than my previous episodes. There is a lot to cover here. But I'm going to talk about how you can heal when you'll never get closure or an apology from someone that you care or cared about. And this applies whether you've been ghosted, blindsided, whether this is a parent or even another family member. My friends, relationships are some of the most rewarding and difficult things that we can encounter in our life. They are what make life fulfilling, and they can also make life feel like shit. So, the short answer to how to heal is to do your own internal work. And I'm going to talk about what that means, what that looks like. I'm going to be using my own experience as a way to illustrate my points, and I may say some stuff that might shock you. It's stuff that you might already be thinking, but maybe feel some shame around admitting. I'm hoping that by me saying it, that it gives you the permission that you need to think it and maybe even say it too. Your experience is your own, and every single thing that you feel about these relationships is 100% valid. And you're not a bad person for thinking it or feeling it. So let's give ourselves a little slack here. I know some of you are navigating very difficult family and personal relationships. Maybe you don't even have a relationship with your mom and or dad. Or maybe you do, but they always end up saying something triggering or even something downright abusive, and you can hardly be around them without your nervous system getting all out of whack. Or maybe you are in or have been in a relationship with someone who has a personality disorder, or with someone who took advantage of you, or who couldn't love you the way that you needed, or maybe was just downright violent with you. All of these things apply, and whenever these kinds of relationships turn sour, it can be devastating. And it can be hard to heal from relationships like this when you never get the apology that you want. You never get the closure that you're seeking. Because what you really want is to have that conversation where they realize that the way they've treated you was very wrong and they take responsibility for that and apologize. You simply want them to be self-aware, to even witness your pain and maybe feel it a little bit. Maybe to even see the family trauma pattern and their part in perpetuating it. Or at the very least, you just want a real apology and not one of those, I'm sorry you were a victim type of non-apologies. You want this pattern to end so that you can rebuild the relationship with something healthy or to just get over it, right? Basically, you want to be vindicated for your struggle. I get it. I have a difficult relationship with both of my parents. And I'm going to tell you a story of what not to do. um, at the time, I thought it was a good idea to have this conversation with my mom, but it turns out it did not go the way that I had planned. And I do not suggest approaching it in this way. But I'm going to tell you the story so that you kind of have an idea of what I'm talking about here. So I don't speak to my mom at this point. Um, and I honestly didn't realize she was a covert narcissist until I tried to have that genuine conversation about events that transpired in the past. In my mind, I was imagining this healing heart to heart mother daughter talk, and what I got was a refusal to meet me in person. I got lots of weird lies, excuses, and even her protecting the man that sexually abused me. I realized that she legit cannot separate fact from fiction when it comes to past events. She legit believes her own lies and half truths. So, this email back and forth ended with one of those non apologies and then a punishment, as narcissists like to do. She was only willing to have a relationship with me in public, and all communication was to be written. Now, I always knew that there was something off about my mother, but after attempting to simply understand what happened in the past and why she did the things she did, and being met with classic narcissistic responses, then I knew a real relationship of connection was just not possible with her. Which, if I'm being honest, is something I've never had with her. So, could I have a relationship with my mother? Sure, as long as I accept that she'll never be the mother I wanted. I have to accept her as she is, which is what I'd pretty much been doing my whole life. Like, she's never been the mom that I wanted, right? So, what's different now? Uh, what's different now is this time I see her and she doesn't like it. This no contact is her choice. She's the one with the weird rules and putting up the barriers. To be honest, it doesn't really bother me. Um, she hasn't really ever been a mom. She's been my guardian, but never really a mom. She's just not capable of that kind of connection. And it's always been really weird. It's something I've always wanted, but at some point I had to come to that realization of like, I'm never going to have this. So, I feel like I have mourned this one. I've mourned this connection. So, if anything to learn from this story, um, it's don't force those kinds of talks. They should probably happen a little bit more organically. And, if I'm being honest, I was just trying to clear the air of a bunch of other things. And, yeah, if I could do it differently, I probably would not have tried to force that conversation. And then there's my father. I believe he has an undiagnosed CPTSD. I believe he's had this his whole life. He definitely ticks all the boxes for it. He's always been easily triggered, blowing up at stupid little things all the time, pretty much every day when I was growing up. Whether we did something to trigger that or not, even if we were around him, we always ended up paying for it. So we tried not to be around him as much as possible. And these days, all I have to do is sound smart and he blows up at me because my intelligence makes him feel stupid. And he actually thinks women are inherently dumb. So, up until mid last year, his blow up would have triggered one of my own. And if he weren't in such a poor state physically, I think it would have come to blows like it used to when I was younger. So, every time I'm around him, he says something abusive or at the very least misogynistic. And I try to only go over there when I have to. And you might be asking me, why do you go over there at all? And that would be a fair question. I didn't have contact with him for 10 years or so, and just showed up one day at his house because my sister and I had a feeling he wasn't doing so well. So I thought I would do a welfare check because he's a recluse. He has nobody, never had any friends, can't keep a relationship, isn't pleasant to be around generally. And I guess I just have pity for him because I can see what's going on at this stage in my life. There's no love there. For me, um, it's impossible for him. It's impossible for him to connect at all with anyone, not even his dog. So I mourned him during that 10-year period. He is a classic case of never getting help for his trauma and thereby regressing over the course of his life. I'd say his emotional IQ is probably that of about a 10-year-old right now, and maybe even a 5-year-old when he gets triggered. So, the commonality with both of them is there will be no change for them in this lifetime. And for me to keep hoping for that is the equivalent of hoping for snow in the dog days of summer. Could it happen? I guess freak conditions could be right, but chances are next to zero. Friends, this is the reality of trauma, okay? There's the generational stuff that gets passed down, not just individual family stuff, but also major traumatic event stuff like Holocaust and Great Depression, wars. There's the individual's own trauma inflicted by caregivers and life events. And that trauma creates fear and anxiety, which become unconscious projections of the past onto some aspect of the present. All right. So when you have trauma and you're not conscious of it, sometimes you end up projecting that onto other people, like your boss, your lover, your children, even your job. And this projection creates a fearful dynamic that colors how one shows up in the world, how you participate in life, how you think, how you behave. And this influences your experience of life, right? If you don't become aware of this, you'll never seek to heal it, especially when you believe that getting any kind of help is weak, unnecessary, or will cost too much money. So you stay trapped, which is what is happening to that person that you loved. They literally are not present in their own lives, and it's all because of trauma. Okay? They are making decisions from a place of fear. And what I'm going to read next is a paraphrase from Thomas Hubel's book, Attuned. If you don't know who Thomas Hubel is, he is I believe he's Israeli, an Israeli mystic, who does a lot of work on generational trauma. And I really love his work and I follow him a lot. So this is a paraphrase. You don't have to go far these days to see that trauma distorts our perception of reality, warping our experience of time and space and inhibiting our access to the present and future. The undigested past desynchronizes us, limiting our ability to connect deeply with others, to achieve flow states, or to download emergent future light. So now that I've been studying trauma and doing my own healing work, I can plainly see how my parents were quote unquote made. Okay? I don't say this to make excuses for their behavior. I do believe it's each and every one of our own personal job to strive to gain this awareness so that we can continue to integrate these traumas so that they no longer affect our life in a negative way. I say this to give you some insight into what's really going on so that you can stop believing that the way they treated you had anything to do with you. You can let that fucking go right now. It has nothing to do with you, and it has everything to do with the trauma that they're holding on to and have not been able to process. They're literally reliving it over and over and over again. That's just how trauma works. And if you don't become aware of it in your life, you will keep repeating these patterns. And that is what is happening with the person that you love, the person that hurt you. Okay? They're just repeating these old patterns and they can't see them. And they're probably so ingrained that even if someone tries to hold up that mirror to show them, they can't. They have to make you wrong. They just can't accept it. Like my mom, she couldn't accept it. It's a shame. But that is the insidiousness of trauma. It really is. So, this leads me to my bullet points of how to heal yourself and move on from people who are, as they sit, incapable of the awareness necessary to understand their actions, how they've hurt you, and from whom you will never receive a real apology. Remember when at the start of this episode I said the short answer is doing your own work? I'm about to talk about what I mean by that and what it looks like. So, look, the only person you can change is you. There is absolutely nothing you can do to change the other person. So, don't even try. And for God's sake, if you're telling yourself that they would have changed if they love you, please stop. That's completely false. This doesn't have anything to do with love. Them not being able to take an honest look at themselves is not about love, it's about trauma. All the love in the world cannot save them from their own trauma. They have to be the ones to do that. All we can do is hold space for that to happen someday. And that's not even your responsibility to do. Okay? Not even with your parents. It is not your responsibility to heal them. All right? So don't even try to take that on. Don't even try to get them to see the error of their ways. Like, it's not going to happen, and all it's going to do is make you nuts. Okay? So, number one, see if you can become aware of how they were made, how they got to be this way. And this one might apply more if the person is a family member, but even if it was a partner or a friend, likely they've let you in on some things that have happened in their life. You can ask other friends, you can ask other family members. You know, that's what I did. I had to piece it together. And once you have a bigger picture, it's easier to do number two, which is you're going to have to work on that other F word, forgiveness. I know, you want to hold on to it. You certainly can if you want to, but I'm telling you, it's a good 90% of what's making you suffer right now. Look, if forgiveness seems like the other F word to you, then it may be because you're confusing it with acceptance and allowance. Let me be clear. That is not what forgiveness is. You do not have to accept or allow their treatment of you to be anything other than what you want it to be. You do not have to even like this person, which sometimes means going no contact. But you can go no contact and forgive them. It's not mutually exclusive. Forgiveness simply means you are not going to allow what they did to you to continue to make your blood pressure go up and cause you to go into a sympathetic nervous system state where you get all flooded with cortisol and stress hormones. Okay? I forgive my dad, but I do not like him. I do not want to be around him. But I'm a good human, and I can't let his dog suffer any more than he already has because my father has almost completely lost his humanity, and I curse him every time I have to be around him. But I go there to help because he's 77 years old and his body is not in good shape, and he's in way over his head with the property that he has right now. He really should be in um, some kind of a care center, but he will never do that. And I am just not looking forward to the day where I have to have that conversation with him because he's quickly losing frontal lobe capacity, and that is just going to be the equivalent of trying to get a toddler to eat their vegetables. Not looking forward to it. So, the other thing is, and it's taken me a little bit of time to come to this conclusion. I didn't used to believe it when people would say, "Your parents did the best they could." I'd be like, seriously? They didn't know hitting people was bad? But now that I understand how trauma works, yeah, they probably knew hitting people, i.e., kids, was wrong, but that was how they were taught. That's how their parents were taught to control kids and so on. It's just how it was, and nobody batted an eye until more recently. And until recently, I didn't know you could lie to yourself so hard and for so long that you actually no longer know the real truth anymore. Until recently, I didn't understand just how deeply trauma can affect a person's ability to connect with another living thing. Wanting to connect so badly, but then as soon as you start feeling something, it literally just makes you angry and you start to put distance. I mean, when you can't even connect to your dog, that's one shut down person. And it would be absolutely ridiculous to expect or even demand someone like that to act like a father. He was never capable of being the father I needed. It isn't just gonna magically happen now. And for me to hold on to any anger and resentment around that is completely pointless. Same for my mom. She's shut down too, always has been, just in a different way. People like that are created. They're not born that way. They get created from their own childhood and life experiences, as were their parents before them. Every person deals with trauma in their own way, but I really think the most sensitive among us are the ones that really get crushed by it and develop the personality disorders and the PTSD. And man, does it really piss me off to think that I was most likely robbed of having a great father. Had he been taught emotional regulation and been properly nourished, which was not going to happen in a family of 12 children, especially when mom herself was liberal with her anger as much as her fists. It might sound like I'm throwing my family under the bus, and perhaps I am, but I'm doing it to illustrate that so many families are like this. Generational trauma is an epidemic, and it's time to stop feeling shame around it and hiding it, and it's time to start healing it, especially before it gets transferred to the next generation. Which leads me to number 3. With forgiveness comes compassion for them and for you especially. Look, I'm going to call it what it really is, and that's self-love. This person from who you need to heal either caused your self-love deficit or was in your life as a result of it. I'm going to say that again for you people in the back who might not have been paying attention because this is important. This person from whom you need to heal either caused your self-love deficit or was in your life as a result of it. Let that sink in for a moment. Whether you want to acknowledge this or not, the people in your life are a reflection of the love that you are telling yourself you are worthy of receiving. If you've gone no contact, you are on the right track. That means you've put boundaries in place that tell others that you are no longer here for treatment of that kind. Keep going with that self-love. You're going to have to start to examine those old beliefs that were handed to you and to start to transform them into something that will support the life that you want to create. Now, some of you may be saying to yourself, I love myself. I know I'm a catch. What is she talking about? Look, you can still feel that way about yourself and yet still have an issue with the amount of love that you feel worthy of receiving. This isn't a conscious thing, okay? I was stuck in this for a very, very long time. Real connection scared the shit out of me, but I would never have admitted that. I didn't even realize that was a problem, right? I had never had real connection growing up. So for the longest time, I was only allowing men into my life that were only able to connect a little bit. I got to experience little sips of connection here and there without being overwhelmed by it. And gradually, I would look for more and more and more connection, with each relationship. But the lull in between times of connection gave me this window that I was looking for. It created this space that I was looking for in order to prove myself worthy of their love. Right? So, in a sense, I was saying to them, look how much I can suffer by loving you and only receiving crumbs in return. Or look how different I am. I'm not like those other girls, as I'm demonstrating this by showing how much shit I would take from them. But I thought myself a catch. And clearly, because of what I was allowing into my life, I did not believe that I was just automatically worthy of the love that I wanted. I felt the need to prove it before I could accept it. And honestly, whenever someone would just show me love outright, would just give it to me without me having to work for it, I felt like they were clingy. I wasn't attracted to people like that. And I repeated this pattern over and over. Meanwhile, I was starting to believe that there was something wrong with me. And I know a lot of you are feeling this. Okay? This is the kind of shit that I help people untangle. The pattern that you can't see. The pattern that is really blocking you from the level of love that you want. Like my idea of what I wanted and the reality of what I was willing to accept were two different things. And I couldn't see that. I didn't realize that. Okay. So this number three, the self-love, is really all about you becoming aware of your own stuff and actively working on healing and integrating it so that you can become what your parents or your ex will never be. You won't become just another of the walking wounded sleepwalking through your life. And friends, like there's no better revenge than that. Right? My revenge on all this was always to have a better life than they did. And I did, and I am. So if you want your revenge, if you want people to take notice, go and make your life the best that it can fucking be. Because that's when people will start to be like, oh, who does she think she is? That's when people will start to, you'll start to trigger them, okay? Instead of them triggering you. Like, it's a weird thing that happens, but it's something that happens, and I'll save more of that for another day. But yeah, that's a whole thing in itself. All right, number four. So the reason that you're suffering so hard over this relationship is because you have a high level of attachment to it. So number four is about releasing that attachment. And attachment is just a thought or a belief. Like you had an idea of how this relationship should have gone. And it's hard for you to let go of it, especially if it's a parent, because you'd be right. Things should have been different, but they aren't. And the sooner you can let that go, the better you're going to feel, right? If this was a lover that you're having a hard time getting over, right? There may have been promises made. There may have been a plan for a certain kind of life that you're really upset never got to happen. But if you remain attached to that, you're keeping yourself attached to the past. And that is causing you suffering. Okay? So here's something to think about. Nobody owes you anything. Not even your parents. All right? Your parents didn't owe you a good life. Before you incarnated, you knew the chances of it turning out like it did, and you still chose it. There was something there for you in those relationships. You thought this experience would lead to a growth opportunity for you. So stop holding on to what you think or wish would have happened and start looking for what this experience has for you. Holding this expectation is just a hangover waiting to happen, and entitlement will only serve to make you feel worse about the whole thing. They are having their own experience in life over there. They're going at their own pace, which may or may not align with yours. Look, friends, apologies don't stem from transgressions. Apologies stem from true awareness of one's actions and how they hurt someone else. You want more than that, though, if you're being honest. As I said before, you want them to witness your pain, to own their part in it, to feel your pain, even perhaps suffer a bit for it. My friends, you're grossly underestimating trauma if you're expecting this. Until I understood it fully, I too was experiencing this. First off, they hurt you out of their own hurts. Those hurts keep them from being able to look at the pattern because admitting that could just feel so devastating, like crisis level devastating. So instead, they have to make you wrong in order to protect all that cannot see the light of day. And those very feelings will keep them from seeking out help for it. They don't want to feel the shame. They don't want to even open that can of devastation because then what would that make them? What would that mean for them? From their view, they can't see how things might look on the other side. So they'll just keep the lid on until they can't, if that day ever comes. And until then, they'll just continue on, probably even starting to regress a bit, especially as they lose frontal lobe capacity. I'm seeing that happen with my father. And it's sad because the more frontal lobe capacity they lose, the more ability they have to heal from trauma, or the less the ability they have to heal from trauma. And the last thing I want to say about this is allow yourself to mourn the relationship if you haven't already. Like likely, you have those attachments and those attachments are keeping you from properly mourning this relationship. Okay? Likely you're judging yourself around this. You might have thoughts like, I shouldn't feel this way, or I'm not going to give them any more of my tears. Those kinds of things are going to keep you stuck in this pattern of attachment. Okay? So, this is where bringing in that compassion for yourself and realizing that you just wanted to be loved. There is nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with wanting to be loved. That's on them that they couldn't give you that, okay? And really, there is a little bit of perhaps taking personal responsibility, not necessarily for the way your parents treated you, but if you had a romantic relationship or a friend relationship, like, what was your role in that? How much shit were you allowing to happen, right? Was it 100% their fault? Probably not. All right. So this is where you have that compassion of, you know what, man, I just wanted to be loved and I was willing to give them the benefit of the doubt. I was willing to give them my best and it just wasn't enough for them. And that is on them. Okay. And then allow those emotions to arise and move through you. So it's when we try to hold it in or suppress it, it's when the healing can't happen, right? The healing happens when the emotions can come up and move through and out. Emotions are simply energy, and they have a rise and a fall just like waves do. Okay? So that energy has to be able to move through you. When you hold it in, you're prolonging your own suffering. And you know what? There's never any shame in mourning. I don't know why sometimes we make ourselves wrong for it, and I don't really we think we shouldn't be feeling these things, but that's not how emotions work. It's not how emotions work. All right? So, make the time and space for it. Allow yourself to mourn these relationships. And then number 5. It's a big one. Learn to regulate your own nervous system. And this is especially important if you have to be around this person like I have to be around my father. So, if you're not sure what that means, um, means if you tend to be anxious all the time or you tend towards depression most of the time, you should think about getting some help and bringing yourself back to center where you're not always in this state of reaction. So when you're not in the center where you're not, it's not that you're not feeling things in the center, it's that you're not activated. All right. You know when your nervous system is activated. You feel anxious. You have that fight or flight. You might feel like crying. You have some strong emotions going on. Okay. When you're in the center, you might have some emotions, but they're not really strong. Okay. They're a little bit more like, yeah, everything's good. Everything's good. So it also means that if you're easily pushed or pulled out of that center, like you're easily triggered by things, and it's tough for you to return to it pretty quickly, there's work for you to do there as well. So, a regulated nervous system does so much for you. It means you can hold and process your emotions without too much disassociating or distracting yourself, which means that you can do more of what I discussed in number 3, right? Healing your own trauma, and you can do it faster. Being able to hold big emotions is a key to healing yourself. A regulated nervous system will keep you healthier in the long run as well, physically, because it lowers the amount of stress hormones in your system that contribute to chronic inflammation. And pretty much every disease on the planet can be attributed to chronic inflammation. Okay? So lower that and you will physically feel better. And when you physically feel better, you have more capacity to deal with life. And a regulated nervous system can also serve you when you have to be around people who trigger you. And this is something that I learned just recently, and it worked brilliantly. So, this past summer, I was at my dad's house, and I don't even remember what it was he got all bent out of shape about, but he starts his stuff where, he he always starts with an insult and kind of continues on from there. He'll just make shit up as he goes. Whatever he can do to try to poke you or hook you in and get you to escalate, because his nervous system needs another nervous system to escalate and keep that going. Okay. And that's where I used to get hooked in. But recently, after I've realized the role of trauma, I've been able to see him in a different light. And when he started that bullshit, I didn't react to it. I stayed calm. I kept my voice calm. And I just kept repeating whatever it was I was trying to tell him or whatever my point was. I just repeated it in a calm voice. And I could see he kind of got to this peak and he was just throwing out anything he could to try to hurt me. And I wasn't getting hooked by it. I just simply kept calm, kept my voice calm, and I could just see it on his face. Like he returned back to a more calmer state. And I didn't have to do anything but stay calm. It was really probably the biggest example I had seen in my own personal life of the law of resonance. Okay? So it's really how babies and toddlers learn how to regulate their nervous system, right? When they have a parent that can stay calm through their storm. Like it comes to a peak, and then because the parent is calm and their nervous system is louder, their calm is louder than the kid's upset. The law of resonance means that kid has to move into coherence with the closest energy source to them. And I saw that happen with my father. I could see it on his face as he blew up, he got to that crescendo, and because I didn't react, his nervous system had to move into coherence with mine, and I could see him drop back down, and whatever it was I was after, I got. Like, and I walked out of there like, oh my God, that is the key to dealing with this man, is I have to remain present. I can't let my own trauma pull me out into the past. I have to stay present in my life right now. And the more I can do that, the less I'm going to get hooked and triggered by other people. And it's a practice. It really is. I've been working on this stuff for a very long time. So start some practices where you can learn how to bring yourself quickly back to center, to stasis. Okay? Doing these other things that I talked about, right? Understanding the big picture, how they were made, being able to bring in compassion for them and forgiving them, bringing that compassion for yourself, learning how to see your own traumas and work to clear those. And then number 4 was releasing those expectations, right? Releasing the attachment. Whatever expectation you had of this relationship, let it go because that's not the reality of the relationship, and it never was. And then finally, learning to regulate the nervous system. All of these things will help you to heal when you are never going to get the heartfelt apology from someone else. They're never going to really fully see how they hurt you. And it's sad, but there are just so many people walking around these days that are just so mired in their trauma they can't see their way out. And I'm sorry if that is a parent or two of yours, like it is for mine. But you just move on and you expand your social circle and seek out the support that you need. Okay. And I know there's a lot here, and it can be difficult to work through all of this on your own. It can be especially difficult to see your own thinking, your own patterns, your own energy. And that is exactly what I help people do. I'm really, really good at seeing energetic patterns and helping people to recognize this and start to poke holes in that. And then helping them move through that to create a new way of being, a new way of thinking in life. And you can apply that to your job, you can apply it to money, you can apply it to relationships. I do it through a relationship focused lens. Um, so if you would like to improve your relationships, if you would like to have more fulfilling relationships and really stop having to go through all of these karmic relationships that are here to teach you something, then I want to invite you to have a chat with me. So my link will be in the show notes if you want to um, follow that and you can book some time with me where I can help you sort some stuff out and I can talk more in depth with you about what your journey might look like and how I can help you. All right, my friends, that's our time for this week. I invite any questions either through comments or even direct emails if you would like. I hope that you have a wonderful week, and I will talk to you next week. Take care.